Game face, game face.
All right, welcome back, gentlemen. This is Michael Sky. We are calling all men. Yeah, we're calling all men into manhood, fatherhood, brotherhood, elderhood. And today we're talking about divorce. We're talking about the challenges that divorced dads face. And our next guest is going to be talking to us about surviving and thriving after divorce. And he has some experience with that. So, yes, I'll introduce him in just a moment, but I want to, first of all, welcome anyone who's watching on his platform. Feel welcome here. You're free to comment. We should be able to see your comments. If you want us to see your name and your image, though, come to facebook.com/, Calling All Men Summit. Like and follow that page. And we're broadcasting live on that page, as well as to some of Hans' channels and some of my channels. So, yeah, welcome to Hans's groups as well. Hans is a international, can we say, coyote. He takes men into new realms, to new levels, and helps them internationalize their life, including their love life. So Hans has helped a number of men who said, you know what, I want adventure when it comes to my lifestyle, to my dating life, to and yeah, there's costly, expensive ways to do that, and there's smart, simple ways to do that. So, welcome, Hans. Hans and I have never been divorced, but we've also never been married. So, we don't quite have a perfect record. I don't think we've been playing the game yet. So.
It's funny you say that because I was a couple of days ago with Elena, the woman of my life, in a talking with a lawyer here because we're going to do Unión Marital de Hecho. She's Colombian, and Unión Marital de Hecho is like a co-living contract, something like that. So there's something there, something official there.
All right. So, yes, something official. All right. I had our guest's bio queued up. Okay, here we go. As a twice divorced dad, he knows firsthand the deep pain, crippling shame, and isolation that can occur after a divorce. It's no surprise to him that divorced men's suicide rate is 10 times that of divorced women. 10 times that of divorced women. Yeah, and it's also quite a bit higher than just men who are not divorced. He says that he would not have survived either of his divorces without the amazing support and connection from his men's circle. And he's going to share with us what those men did to support him and how he supported them through their own challenging life passages and the lifelong love and intimacy that they share as a result. So, Rick Bronick, welcome.
Thank you so much, Michael and Hans. What a delight to be talking to this audience and participating in the Calling All Men Summit. What a joy.
Yes, you're one of a number of elders that we came upon after we had pre-recorded the interviews that are showing over on callingallmensummit.com. And we started meeting so many great men. We're like, let's go live and let's interview a few of them, maybe one a day. And then maybe let's do 2 a day, 3 a day. So so some of your peers, I think I know that Leonard.
Of course.
I think Jed, who we're interviewing tomorrow,
That's
and
a good
then
friend.
Frederick Marks as well. So
another good friend. Yeah.
Yes. Welcome, Rick.
Yeah.
Rick, tell us. I don't know. Maybe start off. Just tell us a bit about your story. Growing up, did you grow up with a father? Did you come from a broken home? And what was your entry into manhood and marriage?
Wow. Well, how much time do you have? I was born in Chicago, Illinois. both of my parents, I'll start with this, both my parents were rape survivors. So
We're what?
rape survivors.
Wow.
Neither had any treatment, neither ever talked about it. Very, very rarely. In fact, I didn't know my father was a survivor until just a few months before he passed.
Wow.
At any rate, my parents struggled through their marriage quite a bit. They were separated 7 times during the 45 years they were married, and they never divorced. I got to give my dad credit. He never abandoned us. I'm the oldest of 6 children. There's an 18-year spread between me and my youngest sister. Many people thought I was her dad instead of her brother. And so I had very strange messages around sexuality and around relationship from my parents. This is the 1950s in the Midwest, and it was not easy to sort of break free of all the messages that I carried around that stuff. And it cost me. It cost me a lot. As you mentioned, I've been divorced twice. I married my first wife, and who was a member of my church. I was very active at the time in Self-Realization Fellowship, which is a church of yoga and meditating most of my life. Thought I had it made. I had a partner in crime who was who had the same belief system I did, who was walking the same path, and we had 2 amazing daughters together. One is 39, one is 36, and both of them have 2 kids, so I have 4 amazing granddaughters as well. Unfortunately,
All women.
All women, yeah. I wonder why I was attracted to men's work. Even our guinea pigs were females. So, yeah.
Wow.
And I was floundering around what it meant to be a man, what it meant to be a father, what it meant to be a husband, what it meant to be a friend. At that time, I didn't have any male friends that I trusted. None. It didn't even occur to me to look for them.
No, why do you think that is? Does that have something to do with your relationship with your dad?
Not really. I mean, I had a surprisingly good relationship with my father. I feel very, very blessed. Unlike most men, my father often told me he loved me. He told me he was proud of me. And we hung out together quite a bit, and we were friends as adults. What I didn't know about my father was kind of the other side of the coin that most men get. I didn't know what his failures were, what his heartbreaks were, because he was a salesman and he put on this persona of everything's fine, everything's cool, you know? And later in his life, after I started doing men's work, I started opening up and realizing I was missing this big part of my father. I actually asked him to come spend some time with me alone, one-on-one, which never happened in my family, with 6 kids. And the first time I asked him, it was kind of cute. This was in 1991. I said, Dad, let's spend some time together, just you and me. And he said, oh, great. Bring up Robin, my wife at the time, and the kids, and we'll go camping together. I said, no, Dad, just you and me. And I could tell this was disconcerting to him. So I just let it go. And a couple months later, I saw him again. I said, hey, Dad, I still want to spend some time with you. And he said, great, bring your brothers up and we'll go fishing together. I go, no, Dad, just you and me. Wait a couple more months. He calls me up out of the blue and he says, Rick, how'd you like to go fishing together, just you and me? And I said, great idea, Dad. And we had this experience of being alone, just the 2 of us, camping in a beautiful lake way up in northern Wisconsin. Just nobody else nearby. We get up at 5:30 in the morning, go out fishing, and come back in the afternoon and clean and cook our catch. And we sat around the campfire in the evenings. And the first night, my dad said, okay, Rick, you wanted to know something. You wanted to know about me. What is it? And I told him, I said, Dad, I want to know, what are your regrets? What are your mistakes? I want to see that side of yourself. I know you love me, which is a huge gift. And he opened up and he began to share some stories. Some of them I'd heard before, but a lot of them I'd never heard before. And on the last day, he finally, I think, felt safe enough and close enough that he could unburden himself of this secret. And My father's father, my grandfather died when my dad was only 15 years old. I never met him, of course. And this was during the Depression. And at his father's funeral, his uncle, his mother's brother, came up to his mother and said, "You can't take care of two boys," because my dad had a brother. "I'm going to take Billy, my dad, and I'm going to take him under my wing and take care of him until you get back on your feet." And his mother said, "Fine." And my dad turned to me then and he said, "And that was the first night my uncle had sex with me." And you could have knocked me over with a feather. I was stunned. I had absolutely no idea that my dad had experienced that. And it went on for years. And I started to cry and I said, "Dad, what did you do with that information? How did you deal with that for the 60 years since then?" And he said, "I did what men were taught to do back in those days, Rick. I stuffed it way down deep inside and I never talked about it again until this moment."
Wow.
Oh, yeah, man, it was unbelievable how that opened up. I mean, I literally held my dad for hours while he sobbed. First time
Wow.
ever processed being basically raped by his uncle, by someone he trusted. Um, and all of a sudden, a lot of the sexual tension between my parents became crystal clear. It went ka-thunk, you know, holy cow. No wonder my mother kept intimating that she thought my dad was gay. That's this kind of stuff. It was just all kinds of things became clear. But was even more beautiful is that it brought my dad and I a closeness, an even deeper closeness that I cherish to this day. And at the end of that camp out, he said to me, "What I've shared with you here, I want it to stay between you and me. I've never talked to anybody. Your mother doesn't know it. Your brothers and sisters don't know it. And I don't want anybody to know it until I pass away." I said, "Dad, your secret is safe with me. But can I share with you? Can we share about this?" And he said, "Yes." After that camp out, he wrote me this beautiful letter, 2-page handwritten letter about how beautiful that time was, how much he appreciates me as a man, what he sees the changes in me since I've been doing my men's work and my personal growth work. And I had asked him to come do a men's training with me. I thought, wow, this would be so cool to be with my dad in a circle. I've been leading men's trainings for years for the Mankind Project and other organizations. And he said, "Rick, I've thought about your invitation and have decided that at my age, it's just too painful to bring up all those old memories. And I'm going to decline to come to a men's training with you." And that happened in September. I got the letter in October of 1991. And 2 months later, the day after Christmas, my dad died of heart failure. Unexpectedly, he wasn't sick, just like that. He was out of my life.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was heart-rending. Um, and before I talk about what men did for me for my divorce, I'll share what men did for me about the loss of my father. I immediately went into deep grief. I just let myself drop into it. Just drop into it. In fact, my sister, who came to my house to tell me that my dad had passed, didn't know what to do with it. So she left. And I picked up the phone and I called my men's circle that I had been in at that time for just a couple of years. And those men all came to my house the next morning. And they sat with me in a circle. And they just listened. I'm going to start crying because this is so moving. They just listened to me talk about my father and what a beautiful man he was and how accomplished he was in the world and how close I felt to him. And when I'd stop, one of the men would say, "Tell me some more." And I told some more. And then I'd cry some more. And they just held me. They literally physically held me and emotionally held me and spiritually held me. And this went on for hours, just hours. And it was so cleansing and so precious and so beautiful. And it made space for me then to be able to go to his funeral. And my mom asked me to do his eulogy so I could stand up in front of hundreds of people and talk about my father in a beautiful way. So that's what my men's group did for me. Now, fast forward another 15 years, my marriage began to struggle. And my wife and I filed for divorce. And again, I turned to those men in my circle. I was devastated. I couldn't imagine not being married. I couldn't imagine leaving my family home. I couldn't imagine leaving my two daughters who were 15 and 18 at the time. I was a very active, sort of involved dad, very active in men's work, very active in personal growth, and so was my former wife. But that group again came to my aid, and they continuously mirrored to me and reminded me of who I was as a man. Because I wanted to blame myself for failing as a father, failing as a husband. I mean, that message was so strong in me, and I know it is in a lot of men. And I was spiraling into depression and self blame. And then, of course, I was separated from my former wife and from my kids. When the divorce was completed, I was allowed to see my daughters on Wednesday nights and every other weekend. So 3 days out of 14. And that just was not enough. It was not enough. So I know firsthand what happens to men. Luckily, I didn't isolate. I have a strong tendency to do that, but I did not. My men friends wouldn't let me. They just stayed with me. They came. They called me all the time. How you doing? They set up activities for me. They showed up in court with me. I'll never forget it. They have a cadre of men with me in court.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. And
Wow.
you know, two men gave me keys to their spare rooms, their homes, and said, anytime you need a place to stay, you come stay with me.
Wow. Incredible.
And a man in my group who had some funds, wrote me a check for $10,000. He said, get yourself a lawyer, protect yourself. I didn't even think about that. So in the middle of that divorce, I had been accused of sexually assaulting my oldest daughter, who I love dearly. So all that was rolled into a horrible time for me, a very deep, dark time in my life. And I only got through that because of the support and love of these men. And
Wow.
yeah, unconditional love. And they did everything for me they could. Why? Because they loved me and because I'd done that for them through their divorces, through the loss of their folks and their family. And I have been in a men's group nonstop for 33 years now, almost 34 years. And
Wow. All the same guys?
well, I was in the original group for 25 years. And those men I'm still very close to. My best friend, Henry Thurman, African American man from Milwaukee. We're still very, very close. We lead trainings together. He's my Hans. And we've been friends for almost 34 years. Very, very close. Now, I moved to California from Milwaukee and I joined another group. I'm in a fabulous group out here, which is actually co-gender. But I get the same kind of support from those folks. And after I moved to California 10 years ago, I remarried, and I remarried before I moved here. And when I got to California, found out that my wife was making plans to leave me. She had gotten involved with another man in another state. After insisting that we move to California, she not only left, but she cleaned out all of our accounts, took all our money, and left. So left me stranded in California. I just moved here a month ago. No money, no wife. And luckily I had connected with a men's circle. So guess what? They did the same thing for me again. They held me while I raged. They held me while I sobbed. They held me while I wondered what is going on? What's wrong with me? And what's the common denominator in these divorces? It's this man right here. So that also caused me to do a deep dive into all the stories I care about relationships, all the stories I carry about what it means to be married, what it means to be in a relationship, what it means to be a father. You know, I did not want to abandon my daughters. My dad never abandoned me, even though he wasn't physically present some of the time. And I was not going to abandon my daughter. So what does that look like as a divorced dad? How do I stay in relationship with them in a good way and maintain that relationship? And I'm proud to say that I was able to do that. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because working through those stories about the dissolution of my first marriage and the dissolution of my second marriage was not easy.
Yeah.
Luckily, I had men in my life that supported me through these extremely difficult times, which many men do not. I mean, that stunning statistic that divorced men suicide 10 times more often than divorced women says so much about what happens to men in divorce. They're
Yeah.
separated from everything they care about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then financially, often they're left in ruin. That happened many times. And then where do they go if they don't have the kind of support system I was able to create for myself? It's easy to see, and I could see it in myself. This dark hole that was there. How easy it would have been to slip into that and just go away.
Yeah.
There's just no hope. So I can relate. I work a lot with divorced men as a coach. We have in my book, Power Tools for Men, that I co-wrote with my fabulous friend who you interviewed yesterday, Leonard Shimchuk. Let me see if I can get that. There we go. A dear man who's also in my support circle and who I love dearly. We support each other. He's also a divorced father. We've talked a lot about what that means, and we work with lots of men who have gone through divorce and looked at that abyss that many men see as the only place to go. At this point, I'm going to hope you have some questions for me.
Yeah. Well, my father went through a pretty terrible divorce, and there were accusations against him.
Yeah.
And there were times I wondered if he might take his own life, when I was a boy. And yeah, it was also every other weekend and Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. So it definitely put a bunch of red flags up for me about marriage.
right.
At least marriage in the States, because everywhere that you do it is different with how the courts are and all this. And the reality is that for many years now, the courts have been quite anti-father. And
Right.
So men face additional risk, with entering into that legal contract. And yeah, it's I can't imagine what that would have been like. But yeah, it's what a blessing to have that group of brothers. Really touched me when you said like they showed up in court,
Yeah.
like that's having your back.
No kidding. He had my back 100%. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yes.
Rick, who was those man circles? Were they existing structures, or did you set them up, or how did they come about?
Well, this particular group that I'm talking about that I was in for 25 years in Milwaukee came out of the training that I did for the Mankind Project, the New Warrior Training Adventure. I did that in 1990, very early on in the work. In Milwaukee, the great gift of doing that is that the founders of the Mankind Project, Rich Tosi, Bill Kault, and Ron Herring, all lived in the Milwaukee area. So I became really close friends with those men, and they led my training. I had the privilege of being led by the founders. And I'm still close with Bill Kault and Rich Tosi. Unfortunately, Ron Herring passed away some time ago. And so all the men that were in my group went through that training together. So we had this intense training experience, this transformational experience, completely changed me as a man. I mean, I came home and my wife and my kids immediately knew I was different in a good way, And I got to tell this quick story. I came home from my training on a Sunday afternoon. My then wife, Robin, had left. I think she was a little scared of who was coming home, right? My two daughters were there. I sent the babysitter home. And I sat on my chair and I put them on my lap. They were 6 and 3 at the time, facing me. And I was just looking at them. And tears started streaming down my face. And tears started streaming down their face. And I said to them, I just want you to know how much Daddy loves you, how precious you are to me, what an amazing human beings you are. And that had such a profound impact on them that every time I came home from a new warrior training adventure, I started staffing. They'd wait by the front door to get that fix, to have that time together. Now, I told them I loved them every day, but there was something precious about that energy that came out of that transformational experience. They saw their dad in a different place, very open, emotionally, spiritually. My heart was hugely open, and it impacted them in a deep way. And in fact, my youngest daughter, Heather, is here in my house right now with my two granddaughters. So that forged a bond for them, a bond that went back to their births. I mean, I delivered both of my daughters. And you're a new dad, Michael. You know what that's like to see that newborn child. Oh my God, when those kids.
You said you birthed them.
I birthed both my daughters, yeah, and one in a birthing center and one actually at home. My second daughter was born at home.
Okay.
It was an amazing experience.
When you say you birthed them, what do you mean?
That?
When you say you birthed them, what do you mean?
I was, there was a birthing coach, a doctor. There's actually a doctor there, and myself. But I'm the one that caught my daughters when they came out of their mother. I gave them their first bath. I held them. I welcomed them to the world.
Wow.
And it's a remarkable experience. And that bond of instantaneous, unconditional love is profound that happened. I do anything for these kids,
Yeah.
And you know that as a new father, how profound that is. And then you can figure out how deeply hurtful it was to be accused of hurting one of my daughters in that way. It's just totally false accusations, ridiculous accusations. But nevertheless, some people believed it. And I came close to going to prison. And I love these kids. It's just like, what's going on in here? It didn't make sense. It felt really, really damaging. Anyhow, I still have that.
I don't know if people, I have the sense that we underestimate how often that sort of thing happens. And it's, because it's, if you really have it out for somebody, and you're fighting over resources and this and that, whatever, tell a story,
Exactly.
And the sad part is that the really destructive part is no matter what you do after that, some great percentage of people are going to never trust you again, are going to believe that story, whether it's true or false. And it is like, I've heard someone, I've seen it referred to as like rape in a sense, when an innocent man is accused of that. It's so violating, in a way.
Tremendously violating close friends who's, chose to believe the stories. I've been questioned in my leadership more than once. This is years ago. It hasn't happened recently. By men who said, I heard you raped your daughter, and I can't follow a man who would do that, this kind of stuff. And it's like, whoa, does this ever end? You're absolutely right. Now, I'm not discounting all the times that stuff like that does happen. My own parents are examples of that. I'm not discounting that. The damage that's done when a man's reputation is drawn through the gutter like that. I came that close to being arrested because I was a public school teacher at the time. And there are laws that when the daughter that I was accused of hurting went to a therapist, she could have very easily have invoked laws to have me arrested. It did not happen because, of course, there was no evidence to support any of that. Nevertheless, it hung over me for a very long time, and it was deeply damaging. And again, those men came to my aid, and they looked me in the eye and they said, Rick, we know you. There's no way you hurt your kids in that way. You love your kids tremendously. You'd never do that. And they kept reminding me because I began to wonder in my own mind, have I done something and blocked it out myself? It could happen.
Yeah. There was a time in the 80s and I think early 90s when this was kind of a popular idea, and a lot of therapists had this, they believed in this idea of like repressed I can't remember exactly what it was, but repressed memory or something. And so they had a way of working with their clients to kind of help create memories of stuff that didn't happen. There was, they would go back and they would have all these things about satanic rituals and babies killing and all this stuff. I mean, come to find out, this stuff never happened, but their way of doing therapy and the psychologist believing that this was the truth about, I don't know,
Right.
the human mind or whatever, created this phenomenon of all kinds of this stuff happening back then. And
Yeah, it was called the recovered memory movement, and it caused a lot of men to be put into prison that were innocent. I'm sorry to say. At any rate, that a lot of that's been discredited now, thank God. And
well, how do you feel? I mean, when the Me Too movement comes out, which is obviously it's good in the ways that men who have been predators and violating women, it's good that they get what's coming to them. But when this hashtag comes out, believe all women,
Mhm.
what is your what is your take on it? Because obviously it takes courage if you're a victim, and if you're a female and you're a victim, to come out and say that. But believe all women.
Well, I would say I support, um, excuse me, I support that movement strongly. I believe that there's an enormous amount of damage done to women in our society. As the father of 3 daughters, I have a stepdaughter as well that I'm very close to, and the grandfather of 4 daughters, and the ex-husband of 2 women, and the soon-to-be husband of a third. I'm really aware of the damage that's done, how many women have been assaulted, harassed, and so forth. We men have some work to do around our misogyny, around our sexism. And sometimes women use that as a weapon to hurt men in their lives. Um, it's not uncommon at all. In fact, the attorney that I got to help me through my divorce is specialized in that and coached me on how to deal with that. And I'm grateful that I was able to find that attorney. So I'm of 2 minds. I've experienced it on both sides. I have an ex-wife who was abused by a teacher. I have a girlfriend who was sexually assaulted. I've worked with many female clients who claim assault, and I believe them. I don't think it's stories that they make up. And on the other side, I have been hurt by false accusations, which are, once those accusations are made, as you said, Michael, your reputation can never be restored. All you can say is, I didn't do that. I would never do that. There's no way to.
That's just what a guilty person would say. So that doesn't even help. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I even went and got a lie detector test to hand out to people, because I think, what can I do? What can I do when people that I know who said they loved me and cared about me suddenly think that I'm this horrible beast? And of course, the lie detector test didn't do anything to change anybody's opinion.
Yeah.
I just wasted a lot of money.
Well, it's it's an interesting phenomenon when a relationship that was a really close relationship comes to the point where it's kind of war, and you're really in a battle to get everybody on your side against the other person, and both sides are judging each other, both sides are feeling threatened, and then the mind is actually more likely to believe more negative things about the other side,
Right. Right.
filter out the good stuff, and even create stories about
Totally.
the other side.
Totally. And that's why it's so important to be in a men's circle, to have men who know you or know me well, who can reflect to me the truth of who I am. Because honestly, I begin to question my own sanity, my own sense of self. Have I done some things that I have blocked myself? Having those men in my life who knew me intimately, who shared the deepest parts of their hearts and souls with me, and I with them, was life-saving, absolutely life-saving. I never considered um, suicide in my life, but I was in a very dark place at one time. Hans, what are your top recommendations to thrive after divorce besides brotherhood? Personal growth. Uh, do some work. Do amends training. Do some breath work. Learn how to meditate. Learn how to find your center, because you're going to be buffeted by all kinds of stories about you. You're absolutely right, Michael. People make up shit or reevaluate stuff you did years ago. I had people telling me stuff, and I said, that never happened. What are you talking about? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Get into therapy, whatever you need to do to find your own grounded stability, your own truth about who you are as a man. And some of that requires you to blow up the own stories in your own head that you've carried around for years and years and years. Like till death do us part for a marriage. So many of us carry that. And so when we get married, we feel like we're such when we get divorced, we feel like we're such failures. Excuse me. And I battled that. I knew I came out of a household where marriage was so important, and my parents, even though they were separated 7 times, they stayed married. And
Wow.
that was such a profound societal belief at the time in the 1950s and 60s. And I had buck that, and it was, getting divorced was a good thing for me in the long run. It was painful in the moment, but it brought me to a huge personal growth spike, a huge connective spike, and I was able to move on in my life and move forward.
What do you mean when you say find your own grounding? You said what does that mean to you, and when do you know that you're there?
Great question, Hans. Well, groundedness for me is a place of peace and silence within me where I can be clear and calm. I mean, I'm buffeted by all kinds of stuff in the world, just like you men are and all men are. Family stuff, work stuff, the world situation, the conflicts that are going on. It can be very easy to become ungrounded, unmoored. And then I forget who I am. I begin to believe in the stories that are running in my head instead of believing the truth of who I am. The way I do that, I mentioned before that I've been a meditator most of my life. I started meditating when I was just 7 years old. And I sit in meditation every day. It's part of my daily practice. I do some breath work. I'm a certified rebirther. I do breath work all the time. And I say my mission to myself. I believe that if a man doesn't have a clear mission about why he's on this planet, then when we hit those times of buffeting, when we hit those times when relationships aren't going well, or we lose people in our lives, either through death or through loss, other losses, we can become unmoored. And that's when we get into real danger, when we start turning to other things to feel good, like drugs or alcohol or food or overwork or all the things that we men do to ourselves. So I think of it, Hans, as a calm, grounded place where I can take deep breaths, where I can connect with my body, feel what's going on here, notice what I need in the moment, and also remind myself of the truth of who I am as a man. And I say my mission to myself every day. My
What is
mission
that? What is that, Rick? Do you mind sharing?
I'm so glad you asked that question. My mission is to create a passionately loving, peaceful planet by speaking, writing, and leading safe, sacred, diverse healing circles. And at this point in my life, I'm so fortunate. That's all I do. I lead men's trainings. My partner, Michelle, is a sex and relationship coach. She's fantastic. I will say it one more time in a minute, Hans. And we work with couples. I lead trainings all over the world. I'm really fortunate to work for the Mankind Project and other organizations. And I have my own companies. I do work with Leonard around our book. Power Tools for Men, a blueprint for healthy masculinity. And you can find us at powertoolsformen.org. And then I'm partners in another company called Wisdom Windfall, which is a training organization that helps people work on leadership and particularly multicultural awareness and how to bring that into the workspace in a way that really encourages productivity in the workplace. So, Hans, my mission again is I create a passionately loving and peaceful planet by speaking, writing, and leading safe, sacred, diverse healing circles. It's taken me years to come to all of that. I created my first mission actually on my new warrior training adventure, and it's been modified as I've changed as a man and as I've changed in my life. You know, retired from teaching, for example, and started a second career as a writer and speaker. That mission serves me in so many ways. If I say it to myself every morning, I get to remind myself the reality of who I am and what I want to do in this world. Why am I here? You know, part of staying grounded and staying positive for me is reminding myself that I have a purpose here. I'm not just here to make money and sit around drinking beer and watching TV. I'm here to make a difference in the world. I'm here to create those safe, sacred, diverse healing circles and work with men. And if I'm fortunate enough, also sometimes women, to help them grow into the human beings they were meant to be. I believe every man is a remarkable human being. Every man is loving, generative, powerful when he is allowed to be the man who he is meant to be. Many of us carry a lot of stories and wounds that keep us from being that. Yes. Sometimes we do horrible things. Yes, I've done horrible things. But deep inside, when we connect with our missions and remind ourselves of who we are, the sky's the limit to what we can become, what we can create in our world. And I encourage every man to find a place, find a coach, find a men's circle, find an organization. It could be a church. Find what your mission in the world is. And the mission has two important components, I think. There's a vision of what I want the world to be, which is passionately loving and peaceful, because I didn't get that in my household, right? And an action that I do, maybe it's uniquely mine, that can bring that condition about in the world. So I write and I speak and I lead trainings. And every time I do that, I get to put a little bit of my gold out into the world and reflect back to men like you two beautiful men, your gold. And in doing that, it creates more and more and more of that beauty in the world. And it keeps my head above water. It keeps me grounded. And at the end of the day, I get to reflect, have I done that? Well, today, I'm obviously doing that because I'm sitting with you two men having this fabulous conversation. I hope there's divorced men out there who are maybe getting a little support, feeling a little bit loved and cared for. I know what you're going through, and I know some ways out. I don't know all the ways out, but I know some ways out that have saved me, literally saved my life.
That's beautiful. Rick, you talking about men's trainings. I participated in the Sterling Men's Weekend maybe about 16 years ago or so. I have not participated in the Mankind Project. Would you give us an idea of what the hell goes on there? What are you guys up to?
Well, we consider it an initiatory training. I think Sterling Weekend is similar to that in some ways, and it's
Yeah.
very different. I mean, I haven't done Sterling, but I know a number of men who have done that and have done both trainings. The New Warrior Training Adventure is a unique experience to be in a circle of maybe 70, 80, 90, or 100 men for a weekend. Just men. Just men. And in that space, we are invited to be raw, to get in touch with our masculinity in a way maybe some of us never had before, and to open up our hearts and our souls and our feeling selves. We men are so numb in the world. We're taught from the day we're born to toughen up, all the stuff we've been talking about all week on this summit, and many of us know so well. And we lose touch with our bodies early on. When I got hurt, men in my life said to me, "You're not hurt. Tough it out. Stand up." I played
Suck it
football.
up.
In high school. Suck it up, exactly. I played football in high school, and I'd get hurt, and I'd come to the sidelines, and the coach would look at me and say, "Hey, you're okay. Get out there." And back in those days, we didn't even have protocols if you got a traumatic brain injury. I mean, it was just go out and play. My brother, my biological brother, Jeff, had a broken foot, and the coach insisted he keep playing. And to this day, he has damage from that. It's horrible stuff we do to ourselves. I believe we're acculturated to ignore our bodies. Why? Because back in those days, we were supposed to protect the community, join the service, be the warriors, and we had to put our bodies at risk. And so we sort of practice that in life by being tough and ignoring our bodies. And when we ignore our bodies, we don't know what's going on here. We don't notice our feelings. Our feelings are messengers to us about what's going on for us.
Well, we're also enculturated to ignore our feelings.
Totally.
And, feelings are very inconvenient for the powers that be. If you're in a classroom in the public school, no one wants to have to deal with your feelings, and we don't want to have to deal with them either, because, if you feel something strong enough, you could do some crazy shit, You feel hatred or love or fear or anger strong enough, you could cause some, you could really mess some things up.
And most of it is hurting ourselves. I mean, that's what a lot of us do. We hurt ourselves through, crazy behaviors or, overindulging in drugs and alcohol and all the stuff that we do to hurt ourselves and each other. Go ahead.
So tell us more. We got a bit sidetracked. Tell us more what happens at the Mankind Project.
Yeah. So first of all, there's more staff than there are participants, which is pretty remarkable.
Is that right?
So the circle might have, let's say on average is about 25 participants, and there'll be 40 staff. Now those staff men don't get paid for being there. In fact, they pay their own room and board and their travel to come give that gift to other men. And some of them do it over and over and over again because they love giving the gift back that they got. Now that's a pretty remarkable model when you think about it. There's 2, 3, or maybe 4 paid leaders that get a very small stipend for leading the training. I'm fortunate to be one of those men, and we get our travel reimbursed, but that's it. Those men are there as a gift of service to other men through their mission to help other men through that portal of transformation. During the course of the weekend, they get a chance to get into a team and to begin team building, which for many men is the first time they've ever connected with other men in any kind of intimate way and learn to work together. They get a chance to take a look at their mission. We do a process to help men find their mission for the first time and articulate it and bring it to the surface and try it on and say it and feel the power of it, the energy of it. That's a piece of work. And we get to work on all the messages, or at least some of the messages that we carry that block that stuff, that tell us, who are you, Rick, to think that you can bring passionate love and peace to this world? Who are you to think you can lead safe and sacred and diverse trainings? Who are you to think that you can work with people of color and LGBT community in a safe way? Who are you? Who do you think you are? We all got those messages, right? As young boys. I remember that so clearly. Trying to be golden and wonderful and excited and exuberant and getting smacked down. We all carry that. So we encourage men to step into the power of their own golden shadows, their own beautiful parts, and to do the hard work of confronting the dark messages, the dark shadows that we all carry, the wounds that we carry, the pain that we carry, the messages from our mothers and our fathers and our grandparents and our churches and the culture in general that keep us in that man box. Fuck the man box. We all got to bust out of that. We all have to figure out how to break out of that shit, how to take our own humanity, our own masculinity, and develop it in a way that works for us. in this circle of other men, it's much easier to do, I can tell you, because we have other men who are doing the same work, who are mirroring and bringing their struggles and bringing their pain and bringing their failures and sharing it. So, yeah, that's what it's about. And then, we have a chance to celebrate as men, to dance wildly, to drum, to be out in nature by ourselves and with a group. There's a part of the raw masculine energy that gets blocked by our society that can be freed in those situations. And you both know what I'm talking about. And there's nothing like it, to be in a circle of 100 men just allowing themselves to be unabashedly, unashamedly masculine. It's really fun.
Love that smile.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that smile is harkening back to some real beautiful moments, wildly alive moments. Hans, what do you say? I don't know that Hans has ever attended something like that.
No, not 100 a man together. I mean, I've been among men in different capacities, growing up as an athlete and a football player, soccer player.
Sure.
But just recently, like where I am now, we had the past month, we call it a growth house, an intentional community, where I was living together with two allies and just setting goals and supporting each other in it. But just the container of having, being among men, and just talk and be there for each other. It was such a reminder of how powerful and healing and joyful such a container is. And a big part of my life, I grew up not knowing how powerful that could be.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter, Hans, if it's 2 or 3 men or 100 men. Being in a circle of men where you're honest with each other, where you hold each other's feet to the fire, where you encourage each other to be brilliant. Wow. It's life-changing, truly life-changing. In our book, Power Tools for Men, Leonard and I talk lots of stories about men who have experienced that, whether it's individually with a therapist or in a circle of however many men it is. And I encourage you to, if you haven't, go to a training like that. Go experience what it's like to be with a large group of men who are all committed to the same thing: their personal growth, their liberation, their finding their authentic masculinity, to be authentic. In our book, we talk a lot about it. Go ahead.
You mentioned you work for some other men's organizations leading events. I'm curious what those are.
Well, there's nothing as large and international as the Mankind Project, for sure. But I've led trainings for smaller regional groups, like the Clearwater Men's Group, which is in western Wisconsin, for example. They did a retreat for years. I've been involved with men's seminars and summits, some of them face-to-face back in the 80s and 90s, with some of the fantastic luminaries that we look to, who started this men's movement in the 80s. Had a privilege of hanging with some of those folks. And I get to speak to crowds sometimes, to groups around the country and around the world. And that's a joy to do as well. Let's see, what other organizations? Oh, Victories of the Heart in Chicago is another men's organization that's beautiful. And Leonard and I were involved with back when we were both in Chicago. I was born in Chicago. 2 Polish guys from Chicago end up in a men's group in California together. How did that happen? And we end up writing a book together. So I get invitations, and I choose carefully based on my mission. Does this give me a chance to create that safe, sacred, diverse healing circle? If the answer is yes, I can unabashedly say yes. And I'm in my 70s, and I feel vital. I feel alive and connected. And I'm getting married later this week.
I was about to ask you about that.
Yeah.
I was about to ask you, after those 2 very difficult divorces, you confessed to us before the call, or not confessed, you announced to us before the call that you're taking the plunge again. And I want to know, like, are you going to say until death do us part? And I want to hear the answer to that. But first, I
No.
just want to remind everyone that we're here all week on facebook.com
Yes.
/ Calling All Summit, talking to some great men like Rick. We invite you to join us, like and follow the page so you get notified when we go live again. And over on the main site, there's 50 men that we've interviewed. There's a different theme, and today's theme is divorce. We're talking about divorced dads. We're also talking about suicide,
Yeah.
some challenging issues. So just a welcome to everyone. I invite everyone, if you're enjoying this conversation with Rick, tag a brother, tag another man in your life that you care about. Reach out and make that connection. Holidays are often a difficult time, especially for divorced dads. Show him some love, invite him to this conversation. Go out and pick up Power Tools for Men, which Rick co-wrote with Leonard, who we interviewed yesterday. And there it is. And okay, Rick, so are you going to vow until death do us part?
Great question. No, actually not. After my second divorce 10 years ago, I did a really deep dive. I mentioned before, what's the common denominator in these two very, very painful splits where both my ex-wife got involved with other men behind my back and, caused me a lot of pain. And of course, the common denominator is me. So I decided to go into a relationship in a really different way, to the best of my ability. If I could find a woman who was willing to do that. And the first thing I said to Michelle, my current partner, and any other prospective woman that I had met before her is, I'm not interested in getting married again. I don't do that very well. And if that's what you're looking for, then I'm not the guy for you. And the second thing I said is, I'm a very sexual being. Sexuality is really important to me. So I'm not looking to hold hands on the beach. I'm looking to have a full relationship. And if you're not, then I'm not the guy for you. And Michelle said, I'll never forget this. She said, I don't need to be married again. I've been divorced too. I've done that. And I'm a very sensuous woman. And by God, that was the truth. So we've been together now for 8 years. As I said, she's a sex and relationship coach. She's helped me heal tremendously on many, many areas, particularly around sexuality. And I've helped her too. And we've gotten closer and closer. And we have this remarkable communication. We have this remarkable connection that's very, very deep. And on Father's Day this year, we were walking on the beach and she turned to me and she handed me a card. And her last name is Lyons, and my animal spirit is lion. And she said, would you join the Lions clan? Will you marry me?
Wow.
And it shocked me because we had sort of toyed with the idea. We've been together. We're very committed to each other. That's not a problem. And we created a conscious relationship that's very, very different. And I said, let me think about this for a minute. Yes, I will. I knew that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with this woman. And we're not bound by any traditions. We're getting married in a very simple way. She's a long-time practicing Buddhist. I'm a long-time practicing yogi. We meditate together every morning. It's beautiful. We've created a beautiful home for ourselves. And getting married is more like we're getting on in years. We need to take care of each other in a way that works. Let's make use of the tax write-offs and other things and the medical things that have to happen when you're married that you can't do if you're not married. And so that's really what it's about. And we're coming together in a beautiful way. My daughter this year is going to be performing the ceremony. My granddaughters, and believe it or not, my first wife, the mother of my daughter, is here too to help celebrate with us. So that tells you how far we have come, the healing that we've done together. And so we're going into a relationship in a very, very different way.
Wow.
Very, very open relationship, loving relationship, and so forth. We're non-monogamous. We're consciously and purposely non-monogamous. Neither one of us are acting on it right now, but having that freedom, having that idea that I can't provide all of Michelle's needs and she can't provide all of mine, and the foolishness that I thought I could is what helped bring about the destruction and the pain in my first 2 marriages. And I thought it was a failure because I couldn't do everything. So anyhow, that's not for everybody. It worked for me in a very real way, and it was very easy to connect with her and say, "Yeah, I want to be married to you. I want to live with you. I want to be with you," and in a very, very different way than I had ever done previously. So we're not going to say till death do us part because that's part of a sort of old model of marriage. We're going to literally, we're literally going to dance in. Thanks, Hans, for the congratulations. We're literally going to dance in and have the whole group dancing together. Because Michelle teaches movement and dance. She's an artist, expressive arts therapist, and we do just all kinds of fun things like that. And then we're going to have this very simple ceremony and celebrate together as a family. So thanks for your congratulations. I think I've got it right this time, men. But it took a lot of personal growth to get to the point where I could accept a woman who loved me unconditionally and demanded of me authenticity and vulnerability to a level that I could not imagine. And I demand the same of her, and we get it from each other. It's a huge gift.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, thanks.
That's beautiful. I'm thinking of a marriage vow until someone leaves the cap off the toothpaste and doesn't apologize.
Exactly. Exactly. I hear that loud and clear.
But I love it. I love how intentionally you guys have created this, this win-win alliance, and yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, Hans.
Yeah, well, we both we love marriages, so
As long as it's somebody else's, right?
Hans and I love weddings. You know, we've attended several weddings across different countries and continents and cultures, and we love weddings. You know, everyone's in that spirit of celebration and union and love, and yeah, it's.
I got to tell you a quick story if you got time. Right after I met Michelle back in 2015, I went to South Africa to lead some trainings, and I went to this art gallery that I just love there, and they have all kinds of indigenous handiwork. And I bought this hat that fits on top of the head. And it was beautiful. It was a piece of art, and I thought, she's an artist, she'll love this. And I brought it home to her, and I gave it to her as a gift. And she took it. It was the week before Thanksgiving, and she took it to her Thanksgiving gathering with a bunch of friends. And one of the women in the group said, "I know that hat. That is a wedding hat from Nigeria. I mean, I'm from South Africa. Of course, that's where it was. It's a tribal wedding hat." And so everybody was giving me a hard time about, see, you're getting married again, whether you like it or not. So guess what we're bringing into our ceremony when we get married soon?
That's awesome.
We still have it. And I
for you.
Endless kidding about it. That I meant to marry her right from the get-go.
Wow.
I had no idea the wedding hat, of course.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Rick, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah. I love your heart is very open and here for men and humanity. And thank you for sharing your story so raw and vulnerable with us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'll
call out my co-author Leonard Shimchek, who's just a marvelous human being. We have deep love for each other, which means we're willing to fight for each other too, and with each other. And it's been a great gift writing a book together. Wow, you talk about a relationship. We worked the book for 6 years together.
Wow,
and it is a powerful book. Thank you so much. I appreciate your great questions and your congratulations and your commentary. It's been a really, really great joy to be with you two men and with your audience.
Yeah, maybe we'll see you in the circle one day.
Definitely. And go to power.org and check us out. There's tons of webinars and interviews and readings and blogs on there that all talk about men, how wonderful men are.
Right.
Awesome. All right,
yes.
Rick, thank you so much. And to everyone else, we're going to be back in, let's see.
23 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
Is it 20? No.
You
Yes.
guys have really taken it on. Thank you for the great work you're doing and the wonderful, wonderful summit you've created.
Yes, thank you
Yes,
for doing
let
the
me
work,
just-
Rick.
Bye-bye.
We will be back in either 23 minutes or 53 minutes. I'm not sure which, but we'll be talking to George Bruno, who's become quite the voice for divorced dads on YouTube and Instagram. All right, thank you, Rick.
Talk
See you
soon.
guys.
Oh, you're welcome, Hans. What a joy to get to know you men a little better. Take care.
Yes.